What's up, guys, and welcome back to another weekly market analysis video on my YouTube channel. So last week, if you watched my video before market open, you're going to realize that everything played out perfectly well, just like I predicted, right? And so this week I'm here for you once again to share with you what I will be looking at for the upcoming trading week, right? And trust me, this week the market looks very crazy, right? And so you might really want to watch this video before you take any trading decision, especially if you're going to trade Euro USD and gold, because that is what I will be talking about today. Okay, so real quick, let me start with Euro USD. Okay, Euro USD. Okay, so I'm going to start from the higher time frame, that is the weekly. So starting from the higher time frame, we can see that the weekly is reacting from a certain zone, right? And that zone is a range all the way back from 2002, right? So I just marked that to see how price will react to that zone. Okay, but then overall on the weekly time frame, we are bearish because this is our last high that created this low. Okay, so yeah, quickly I'll step into my daily time frame and let me show you what the daily is doing. So from our previous videos, we've established the fact that the daily and the weekly are sharing the same structural leg. So it tells us that weekly is bearish, daily is also bearish. Okay, but then there is something that is going on in here and I would like to show you that. Okay, so once I know that the weekly and the daily are sharing the same structural leg, it tells me that this low that I have in here is a target liquidity or an external liquidity. What it means is that I will need price to take out this low. Okay, but then just before I am anticipating that for the upcoming week, I can see this beautiful block in here, which is in confluence with the target liquidity, right? Normally I won't look at this demand zones, right? But then the reason why I want to talk about this is I want to create this second scenario for you to also watch. Right now, what am I seeing? We can see that this push came all the way from an imbalance, right? Not an order block. Okay, and yeah, we may have scenarios where price will react from an imbalance and move all the way to break a target liquidity or to take out a target liquidity. Okay, but in here what I am anticipating is I have seen this pattern play out a lot, where you have price make a push like this, we build all these structural levels to the upside, and what happens is price comes all the way back down to grab all these lows like this. So all these lows become liquidity, so price grab all these lows into an order block like this, and then we push back up proper. Okay, so this is the kind of scenario that I'm seeing here, right? But then I can't just conclude until the intraday time frames have told me so. Okay, and so I'll step into the intraday time frames very soon, but then I just want to establish this. Okay, so right in here, what am I going to do? I'm just going to wait and see how the intraday time frames react, just to see if it will create that pattern that I drew in here, because I still have this other block right in here and one up here, and there is even one up here. Okay, so I have like 3 zones to look at, right? And so I'm just waiting for that kind of thing, but then I can only conclude when the intraday time frames has told me that it really wants to do that before we make a push to the downside. Okay, so yeah, always react to the market. Okay, so if I step into the H4, you're going to see that pattern that I drew. Okay, you can see that. Okay, we have that push, we have H4 making higher highs, right, and higher lows, and all these lows become liquidity, we can see, and that is the order block from the daily, and we have tapped into it. Okay, but then yeah, I can't conclude on that yet, that we can make a push until the intraday time frames have said that. Okay, so yeah, on the H4, what are we seeing? We had this low that created this high, right? And we can see the price made a push to the downside, but then we didn't take out that low. It was like it created like an equal lows, right? And so I'm confident to say that my H4 leg is from this high to where we have price currently at. Okay, and that also tells me that I have 2 levels of supply to watch. The first one being in here as my decisional supply zone, and the second one being in here as my origin supply zone. What it tells me is that if the intraday time frame tells me that it wants to make a reaction or make a retracement, I'm gonna have price what coming into any of the supply zones before we push back down. Okay, so either of these supply zones before we push back down. Okay, so real quick, let me quickly mark this supply zone and step into the intraday time frame, which is my M15, and show you what's happening. So here on the M15, we can see that this was actually my last low that created this high. Okay, we made a push to the downside, but it was a complex pullback. We didn't take out this low until this happened. Okay, so that's my M15 leg. After that, what do we have? Another push all the way to the downside, right? So M15 is making lower highs and lower lows. So M15 is also bearish, aligning with daily, aligning with H4, okay, and also the weekly. Okay, so yeah, what are the possible scenarios? Now we can see what the intraday time frames is doing, right? It is also bearish, right? And so I'm going to give you 3 possible scenarios to look at. Now, the first highly probable scenario that we can have is, due to what market is presented to us currently, we can have price coming into the supply zone, and then we continue the push to the downside to take out that target liquidity of the daily leg, right? Okay, another scenario that we can have is based on this demand zone that I've marked in here, this reactive demand zone. What we can have is we can have price taking out this high, right? If this high gets taken out, then we're going to have maybe a retracement, and we're going to continue all the way to the upside into this level of supply that we've marked in here. Okay, this level of supply that we have above here. Okay, another thing that we can have is we can have price coming into this level of supply, right? Make another push to the downside, and then probably make a change of intent before we come back into this level of supply. Okay, so these are the 3 possible scenarios that I will be looking at for the intraday time frames to tell me before I can take a trading decision. But then, just from what is being presented to us currently, right, M15 is bearish, and I will just look at how price will react to this level when the market opens. Okay, so yeah, that's what I'll be looking at on Euro USD. Real quick, let me step on gold and let's talk about what is happening on gold. So again, I'm going to start from the higher time frame. Okay, so here on the weekly time frame, first off, we can see all these beautiful levels of liquidity built up, right? It tells you that if price wants to make that push to the downside, it will really be massive, right? So this liquidity was built from 2 years ago, that is 2020, and that's cool. So real quick, I'll step into my daily, and let's see what the daily is doing. So from our previous videos, we've established the fact that this is the level that created this low. It tells me that this low is my target liquidity, and we can see how it is in confluence with all those liquidity pool built from 2 years ago. What it tells me is that I'm looking for price to take out this low, just like that, as simple as that. Okay, but then we will always need to make sure that the intraday time frames are telling us that it wants to do that. So we can see in here that the daily half price reacting from the supply zone, which is okay for us, is very good. And real quick, I'll step into H4 and let's see what H4 is doing. Okay, so this was the last low of the H4 that created this high, and we can see that that level has been breached. Okay, so it tells us that H4 is also bearish, aligning with the daily time frame, which is a good thing, right? And once I have this last level of H4 point of demand broken, it tells me that all other level of H4 demand becomes internal liquidity. Mind you, this is a target liquidity from the daily time frame that we are looking forward for price to get to. So right here on H4, even without stepping to the intraday time frames, you're going to see that we had this beautiful candle that made a push to the downside. We've grabbed liquidity to our left, right? And so I'm going to mark this as my supply zone, and to see, I'll wait and see what price will do on intraday time frames. What it means is that if the intraday time frames shows any intention to make a retracement, we're gonna have price come into this level like this before we continue the push all the way to the downside. Okay, it doesn't mean that this level can't break. We can have this level breaking, right? But it all will depend on what the intraday time frame say. So if we have this level breaking, we're going to have price, moving into certain levels before we sell back down. Okay, but then currently with what price is presenting to us, all what we have is this level of supply to watch and see how price reacts to it, right? But then all will be based on what the intraday time frames will say. So real quick, I'll step into M15 and we will look at what M15 is saying. So here on M15, we can see that we had this beautiful break of structure to the downside. So M15 was making lower highs, lower lows, lower high, lower low, and this was the last lower high that created this low that we are looking at, and we can see that it has grabbed liquidity to our left, so it makes it a high probability point of interest to watch. Okay, what this tells us is that price can come all the way into this level before we push back down. Okay, it doesn't mean that we can't take out this high. We can take out this high. Why? Because we have this level of supply in here. Okay, so we can have a scenario where price will take out this high, right, and tap into this level of supply before we sell back down. Okay, but then in as much as we are looking for price to come into this level of supply before we sell back down, you need to look at what price is also doing on the 5-minute time frame. Okay, so real quick, I'll step into M5 and I will show you what price is doing. So here on M5, what we can see is that we have this beautiful M5 leg within this whole M15 leg, right? And we can see that we have this last point of supply that created this low. What this tells us is that if we want to see any push into this level of M15 supply, we will need to have this level taken out before we can confirm price to come into this level of supply to sell back down or even to break into higher levels of supply. And even with that, there is this beautiful candle that I always pay attention to, right? These are inside bars, and trust me, they are very, very good candles that you should pay attention to. So you can even see how price, came to this candle for the first time, it didn't break, came back for the second time, and it is also making like some sort of a push. So what can we have here as possible scenarios? We can have this level holding, right? And then we're going to continue with the pushes all the way to the downside, or we can have this level holding for the first time, we make a push, right? And then probably on the second move, we're gonna have a change of trend on M5, right? Then now we can look for price to come into this level of supply right in here to sell back down. Okay, another thing that we can have is when the market opens, we can have price breaking this level, right? And then we're gonna come right into this level of supply. Then we will see how price reacts before we sell back down. If it gives us any confirmation to sell back down, we will take that. If it doesn't and we break, we know where we are heading to. We are heading to a level of supply of the M15 right in here, right, before we sell back down. Yeah, so this is what I'm looking at on these two pairs, right? And if you like this video, give this video a thumbs up, leave a like and a comment on this video. Okay, so yeah, peace out.